Hello, all you golf nerds and 3D motion geeks out there. I am Jason Sutton, aka The Guru, and boy, do I have a show for you today. This is 3D week here at the Golf Guru Show because this episode I have my good friend Jon Sinclair. If you don't know who Jon is, then you just haven't been paying attention. He is one of the most humble and the most giving individuals that I've met in our business, and it is a guy that would not toot his own horn, so it's up to me to do it for him. A little background on Jon. Jon is the owner and director of instruction at Sinclair Golf in Euless, Texas. Sinclair Golf is one of the most technological advanced teaching centers in the country, containing AMM 3D with TPI reports, Gears Motion Capture 3D, 4D Motion Capture 3D, JC Video, TrackMan 4 launch monitors, Sam Putt Lab, and Sam Balance Lab. Jon is on the advisory staff for Adele Golf, 4D Motion, and TPT Golf. His certifications include Tyler's Performance Institute, TPI Level 2 Biomechanics and Fitness, TrackMan Level 2, Sam Putt Lab Level 2, and Sam Balance Lab. In 2015, he became a master as a golf motion capture specialist as certified by Phil Cheatham. He completed Dr. Kwan's Golf Biomechanics Instructor Training Program Level 1 as well. He is a master golf psych instructor and one of only 3 in the world. Henry Brunton and Lou Salatare are the other 2. So this guy knows a lot about a lot. He's also the 2017 Teacher of the Year in the North Texas PGA section, where he is honored to be included with the group of outstanding instructors in the DFW area. But what he's most known for is his large database of PGA Tour players with 3D motion. So he's one of the most sought after experts in capturing and interpreting 3D data with the AMM system. Jon has worked with more than 60 coaches and players on the PGAweb.com champions and LPGA Tour players. So he is a jack of all trades and a really, really smart guy. So I'm very excited to have him on the show and have just a really in-depth discussion about 3D. And we obviously ran out of time, as you'll see from this discussion. So we're going to have him back on the show. Did not even get to all of the questions that I wanted to ask, but he just kept going with just such great information that are going to help all you coaches out there, especially the young coaches that are looking to start to dig into some 3D motion and reading graphs. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with my good friend, Jon Sinclair. Jon Sinclair, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know how busy you are.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you even asking me. I'm honored.
Oh, absolutely. You were one of my top on the list because I've learned so much from you over the few years that we've known each other, and I'm excited to kind of get into some of the techie stuff here. It's kind of the 3D week. I had Tyler Farrell on a couple of days ago, so we're covering a lot of your 3D research, which is going to be very exciting for the coaches out there. So before we kind of get into it and dive into the 3D, take the listeners back a little bit to early in your career and even in your childhood and in coming up as you were growing up in your formative years of kind of how you got to where you are today.
Well, I have a blank spot in most of my childhood. I can't remember a lot of that, but I won't go too much there. But certainly I always loved golf. I was a baseball player mostly, and then would pick up golf here and there. And somewhere around the 9th grade or so, golf was it. I didn't want to play any other sports. I liked the individual part of it. As opposed to the team part, I like to do my own work, and so that kind of set me towards golf. So I started and played golf in high school, took a little hiatus there, and went to work for about a year and took it off, and then when I graduated from high school, went to college and had a chance to play at a couple places, but decided college wasn't for me and didn't really want to play for a team. I wanted to be a pro, so I went to work. Became a electrician, became a HVAC, had a license there, mechanic, had a license there. I had I did all kinds of things, whatever the license I had, but doesn't matter, a lot of them. And I just did a lot of trade stuff so I could earn enough money to turn pro on my own. And when I turned 27, got married to my wife, Sherry, which was awesome. And she supported me and turned pro. And we went traveling and a lot of mini tours everywhere, all over the world. And got as far as, getting to play some Nike stuff. That'll date me a little bit. And then one morning I woke up and I told her I didn't want to play anymore. I was actually playing my best golf. Met Dr. Deborah Graham the last 3 years I played, and she helped me tremendously in the mental game. And I guess through that, I decided I'm tired of traveling to all these places and just seeing a golf course. There's plenty of golf courses here in Texas. And we talked about it and decided to buy a little driving range and start teaching. And that was in 2000. And it's funny, everybody knows me as a techie guy, but I'm a mental coach first.
Right.
And when I first started teaching, I didn't think I needed the anything other than just my eyes, and I'd go around and I don't need video, don't need this, don't need that. And the truth is, I was making people a lot better. My teaching career took off pretty fast. I'm there at a little 10-cup range in Cleburne, Texas that Sherry and I built. And I'm not kidding when I say 10-cup. It was a little shack, a barn like they make, your storage facility out in your backyard. And I became, the biggest seller of Ping and Callaway clubs in all of Dallas-Fort Worth out of that little shop.
So how did you get your name out there when you first started teaching? What were some of the marketing ideas that, or was you just the only guy in that area, or like, how did you make your name?
I try to tell even the guys that come here, I went out and I did every charity I could find. Started in a March, and for 3 months, I just went out and did Beat the Pro and raised money for every charity that would let me do it. And I just passed my card out, and made charities a ton of money. And I never had to advertise, and people started coming. And, if you make one person better, 10 come.
Right. And,
all the advertising things that I ever tried in my last, how many years this has been, has failed. I mean, it's not been what it was, better than word of mouth and just making people better at golf. I mean, that was the secret. And I try to tell these young guys, go and do that. Go out there. You will be so busy. And, and after 3 months, I've been 2 weeks minimum booked out for the last 18 years. So most of it's been word of mouth, and I don't really do much advertising. I tried the Golf Channel thing, and for me that didn't work out. I did it more for the other guys that were here.
Right.
And all that did was cost me a bunch of money and didn't really work out. So to me, it's just flat making people better. If you lower somebody's handicap by a few strokes, you're going to get their 10 friends.
Right. They're going to talk about it.
Yeah, and those 10 turn into another 10, and next thing you know, you're turning people away. So that's kind of the way it started for me. And back to the idea of what happened to me is I looked at a few videos, and I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm wrong. I'm doing these things wrong, and then I started using the videos and started looking at the videos, and I'm scratching my head, and I'm going, I don't see it that way. I see it very differently than what I'm seeing in the videos. And came along, and I met Dr. Rob Neal. Met him over at Jim McLean's in Fort Worth, and he opened my eyes to 3D. And I'm looking at it and going, that's what I see. I don't see what I see on video. And at that time, his system did what we call snap-align adjustment, where you just stand there and you stand in a T pose and you push the button and it zeroes you out. Well, I didn't really realize how it worked at that moment until one day I caught a lady standing funny, and I hit the 0 button, and then on the screen it came up straight, and I just went, what is that? And so I started getting interested in how these things work, started talking to Doc Neal, who I always give credit to the 3D that I've been involved with, because he opened my eyes.
Right.
And but he only did the upper body. He was only doing the upper body, and then it wasn't being digitized. And he would tell me that, that the legs are only 20%. And so I met Dr. Phil Cheatham, now doctor, then it was Phil Cheatham, and he showed me, and I became a beta tester for the TPI system, AMM. And then I started to see everything the way that my eyes would see it. And then I could actually see it and look at instead of happening faster than I can see. And he helped me a ton and understand the body and the AMM system. For golf pros out there, still the gold standard. I mean, I own a lot of different ones, but that's still the one that I use today.
Right.
And to be honest, it's still the original program from 11 years ago. And
so it hadn't changed.
So I found out that I didn't know squat.
Yeah.
No, the AMM system hadn't changed. We're still, we digitized the center of the joints, and that's a lot different than the other 3D systems out there. And, I talked to Phil a long time ago, and even Doc Neal's is the same way now. It's exactly the same. So he does his is in my opinion, the gold standard as well, the GBD system.
Right.
Because they're doing the centers of the joints.
He's doing the putting with David and doing a lot of other stuff too. Using that.
Yes. And so he those two systems, I think, haven't been beaten yet.
Yeah, you have gears. You've been working with gears, I know, and I know you guys are trying to improve that.
And it's improved a great deal, a great deal. And in fact, Michael, I just got another suit, and I'm going to try that. And Gears is working really hard towards, system. And Gears, to be honest, that's the thing that's going the hottest right now. And they're doing a great job, and Michael's doing a great job. And mostly I've used it for the club, but I'm starting to look at the body now that they're getting closer. And my deal, with Michael's always been, I'm not going to throw away the last 11 years of data. I mean, obviously, people probably out there listening to this know I have one of the biggest databases there is in the world.
That's right. And that's what we're going to talk about.
All of a sudden, I can't throw all that stuff away and start over if a system's not capturing in the same way. Argue right or wrong, but it needs to be, relative to the data that I have over the last 11, 12 years.
Yeah, it's
AMM just hasn't changed.
It's so interesting that it's kind of similar to Tyler's story as he came up through, the TPI, and really before even starting to look at video went straight into 3D. And that's where, I'm trying to get better at learning how to use graphs and being able to recognize them. How long did it take you once you started looking at the graphs to sort of get quicker at it, I guess? I'm sure it's just a lot of repetition, but what if you got a young coach out there that's wanting to get better at understanding the 3D graphs, what steps would you take?
I tell you what I would do if I was out there is I would go get the 4D motion is what I'd get. That's the closest thing that I have, and that's reasonable. It's not, you're going to break the bank getting
right.
it. I've put all my data in that system actually, but what I like about that and the way that I used to do it is I would watch the graph and the swing at the same time.
Gotcha.
So I would sit there and so I would start to, because I came up, a little bit different. I was looking at the swing and I was seeing things that I wasn't seeing in 2 dimensions. And the graphs made more sense to me when I would look at the swing and I'd see the motion in the graph. So in the 4D motion, we set it up to where you can have the graph lay over the avatar.
Right.
And that's the way I explain it, even in the certification I do for them is, put that graph up there and the body and just watch it move and see the graph indifferently. And I know, Tyler and I are great friends, and I know he's, we look at the graphs and see the motion right away. And it's fun to sit down there and speak to someone like that, or a Dr. Neal or Phil Cheatham or a Sasha McKenzie that sees it in the same way that we do. And it's that's the way I would tell the people to do it is at least get a video or get the avatar on your system. If it's AMM, GBD, gears, pull the graph up and watch the videos at the same time. And so that you can see the motions happening, and then you start to get used to it, what you're seeing in the graph really quickly. And, and the TPI, Tyler was going up through with Greg Rose and all that. And I was actually going a different direction, and Ryan Chaney, I think, was over there doing the same. And I was just doing it on my own. So when I got that system, I can promise you, I didn't know, oh my God, what'd I do? Because I get this powerful tool, and I was like, holy crap. And Phil's like, well, this is how you do it. And have a good day. Give me some feedback. And so I would paste graphs up on my walls and just, stare at them. I would have a book, and I would just stare at it. And, I'd go talk to Phil. I'd go, to the seminars. TPI would do I'd go listen to them. And I have great respect for those guys and pushing this stuff forward. Both Greg and Dave, and I would just listen to as many people as I could, and then I just stare at graphs. Again, we go back to, I quit playing baseball to play golf because I like doing things on my own. I like making my own mistakes, and and I think that's a good way to learn. That's the way we learn golf.
Right.
You swing, you hit a shot, and you figure out, was that good or not? So that's kind of what I do. I look at something and I see, was that good or not? Did I get that right? Did I not? And that's my recommendation on that end for sure. That's the way I did it, and that's why I teach the guys that come around me to do it.
That's great advice, and we're gonna talk about that a little bit further. But I want to dive into some of the things, like early on when you're talking about looking at 3D graphs and then looking at video. What are some of the things that fooled you, and now that are truths? And then I want to sort of follow up with that and start talking about wrist angles and transitions and forces and torques and whatnot. But what were some of the things? Because I've for those guys out there that haven't seen your presentations are missing out. And I think you brought up some really cool, simple areas that you need to be careful watching video as opposed to 3D.
Well, one of the first things that sticks out is thinking you had a straight arm.
Yes,
that it'll the 2D will certainly make people think you need a straight arm, and actually you're using certainly your lead arm as an extra little lever that people don't even put in the kinematic sequence, and I found that to be very, very false, to think you needed that straight arm and all that. And then the 2D looks like you have a straight arm, but I think 175, if we go straight, as 180 is the straightest arm I think I've ever recorded at any time during the swing. I could be off by a degree or two, but that's they're just not straight. That one, and nor should they be. And I think if you really actually straightened your arm, you'd probably create a lot of elbow injuries. Maybe hyperextending it or going too far. So. Right. Those things I think is probably one of the biggest ones. Square shoulders would definitely be another one, that the idea that you want to be square, people don't realize how the shoulder girdles work. I think Dr. Kwan is another one of my guys that I like to go to listen to. And his system finally shows the shoulder girdles and how they work. I think that's opened a lot of people's minds. But what AMM is looking at is the thorax and the middle of your chest, and how is that open. The last thing unless you're hitting some big high looping hook, you certainly wouldn't want to have that square at impact. So looking at 2D, thinking that's square is a mistake. A square shoulder look, you'd probably be 20 degrees open. I believe that's the right number, about
Gotcha.
20 degrees open at impact. But when you're open and you're reaching across your body, with your lead arm, well, you're going to pull that shoulder in, and it's going to look square if you're in a camera.
And the torso's open,
where's
but
the camera?
There's the other thing. Talk about the camera angles a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, if your camera angles, out to the right, maybe down the ball line, which I like to use. I hate arguing over camera angles because I don't really care where you put it. Just put it in the same place.
Yes.
Or know enough about it to know we all have every parent in the world sending us camera angles from every angle, so we better know where that camera is. Or,
Right.
you develop a skill to learn where the camera's looking before you even look at the video. But certainly, if you move the camera out away towards the ball, you're going to see more of the lead shoulder. If you move it back away, you're going to see less. I mean, you can certainly, if you're doing any college videos for kids, you're going to put the best angle for the college coach to see too. I mean, you can make a swing look pretty dang good, with the 2D camera. So depending on what you want it to look like. So, understanding the camera angles and what you're looking at, I think, is paramount. I still got people coming to me thinking that the shaft plane, comes back and impacts the same place it started, and it doesn't.
No chance.
It's never done it. It's, I mean, maybe the closest person, and I have never captured him, might be Sergio Garcia, but when you slide forward and your right side bend, your hands go forward, it'll have an appearance of leaning, being down a little bit more. But when you start seeing that stuff in 3D, you realize, man, it doesn't make any sense to even want to be down there.
Right.
To have, much more ulnar deviation in your wrist and it wouldn't make any sense to be down there. So that's the other one that gets me, is that shaft angle. Is we want those things to straighten out. They should. I obviously do a lot of work on drivers, and people come in, and if you're setting the driver up where it's exactly directly behind the ball and you're setting it on the ground, and you wonder why you're hitting in the heel.
Yeah, lift it up.
Once your hands go into lift it up and go into ulnar deviation, and you're going to see why you hit it in the heel.
That's right.
Setting that ball up more towards the toe is to me, just biomechanics.
Yes.
You'll have those guys that hover it that, and of course there are people that set it in the middle and hit it in the middle. They adjust.
Right.
But, as a general rule, that would be what I would be looking at, and what we see people that are consistently hitting the heel. We just line it up in the toe, move back a little bit, and you don't have to adjust your swing.
Right. You don't. Yeah, exactly. That's the easiest fix in America too. It's like, then they look at you like you're crazy. Like it's insane. But all you gotta do is back up an inch, and we're good.
Yeah. I actually, here's a true story. This happened, it's 2 weeks ago. I had a young lady come in that was struggling. She's hitting everything in the toe. This is in the heel story, but it's very similar. And the dad's sitting back there. And of course, we charge a good amount of money. It's not cheap to come in to see us. And,
right.
and I looked at the young lady, watched her swing, and she's hitting in the toe. And I just looked at her and I said, have you ever thought about just hitting in the middle of the club? Have you ever just thought about hitting the ball in the middle of the club? And I thought her dad was going to kill me. He jumped up out of the chair, and I just said, sir, please sit back down. It's okay. And so the young lady said, no. I said, well, why don't we just hit some with you thinking about you're going to feel it and you're just going to hit it in the middle of the club. She never hit the toe again.
Oh, my gosh.
For the whole hour. And then I walked back to the dad, and I said, you're not paying me for how I do things. You're paying me for what I know.
Exactly.
And you wanted me to change your swing to hit it in the middle, and really wasn't necessary.
Oh,
And so hopefully, we're able to recognize those things. And, obviously he's very happy. She's been playing great. She hadn't missed the middle of the club anymore. She was really good at hitting it in the toe. It was making a nice little round quarter spot right in the toe. And the club fit. I checked the club. The club was fine. It wasn't that. It was just, how about let's not hit it there?
Yeah.
So those are types of things that you can also see in 3D when people think they change. They're not changing much. A 40-yard offline shot is not going to look that much different in 3D than the perfect shot. There's just not a lot going on. People are more repetitive than they think they are. And certainly if you're off, they're more adept to being able to adjust than you think they are. And Tyler and I have had this discussion, and somebody sways off the ball or whatever. They're pretty good at getting back.
Mm-hmm.
if the idea is to hit the ball.
Right.
But some of these players that I do on 3D, and I look at them and I look at them and I look at them, they don't change that much. And the ball might be 40 yards offline, and it's 0.7 degrees difference in their supination of their lead arm. And that's it. That'll be the only difference.
Yeah.
And, so sometimes we get too latched into what the ball did as to telling us what the body did. And big mistake. I mean, how many times have you been teaching and the parents come in and say, well, little Johnny or little Susie, they look up all the time.
Oh, yeah, all the
and
time.
We got to keep their head down. Yeah, and then you take the video, and as soon as they top one, they go, see? They look up every time. And then you show them the video, and they got their head so planted between their, and their chest, they can't do anything.
Right.
And the parent just sees the top, and it makes perfect sense that you would lift up or look up or whatever. As humans, we're trying to get a reason for the miss, and whatever sounds plausible. Oh, I blocked it to the right. I got it. How many times I hear that? I was like, no, you didn't really move. Right. Yeah, you just maybe left the club face open.
That's the classic announcer's analysis. He got ahead of it because it went to the right. And I've never seen anybody actually get their upper body ahead of the golf ball and actually hit a shot, especially at the pro level.
No. Isn't it great in how they talk right through it?
Yeah.
Oh, look at him. He's going to leave the face open. It comes through to shut, and it's in the heel, and they just talk right through it like you didn't even see it.
No idea about gear effect. It's unbelievable. So let's dig into some of the things that you've found, because like you said, you've got probably the biggest database of professional golfers, like some of the best players in the world. So what have you found, let's say, starting with like wrist angles and arms, that they're doing that's different than the average player, or any kind of commonalities that you see?
The commonalities that I see and what I really push and promote in this day and time, that everybody has to have a flat wrist. I see the motion, see the position as the issue. I see the motion as being very similar. My database shows at the top, I don't know the exact numbers right off the top of my head, but it's definitely an extension. It's probably as much as 5 to 10 degrees, somewhere in that range would be the average standard deviation of my database.
Okay. Lead wrist, right? And
so that goes lead wrist. Yeah. And that certainly goes against what the world is teaching right now.
Right.
And my prediction, I talk to Joe Mayo a lot. We talk a lot, and my prediction is, if I keep running my database and I keep doing players, and that number is going to get closer over the next 10 years to zero.
Because of what we're teaching.
It's the fad, and it's what we're teaching.
Yeah.
And, because Dustin Johnson, he's great. Mm-hmm. And Greg Rose, I know he'll back me up on this fact, because he's got a great database too. And we both have different players. We have a lot of the same, but we have different players for the most part. We both see a lot of the same stuff. And we didn't do our studies and what we were looking at. We did them, in time simultaneously, but never together. And, we both know that it's just a fact that if you have more extension at the top, you're going to hit it further. So, Dustin Johnson, he may never find his golf ball again, but he would hit it further if he was an extension at the top versus flexion. That would happen. And then you look at all the data that we look at in the world, that if you get more travel, applying the same force to the club for longer, you're going to hit it further. You're going to have more speed at the bottom. So that goes hand in hand.
Gotcha.
More travel out of the club head if you go into extension. Now, that doesn't mean I promote going to extension for everybody. Absolutely do not. I'm going to deal with the player that's in front of me. But the idea that we need to have everybody at a flat rest at the top, to me, is absolutely ludicrous. If that's what you want to go with, that's fine. But,
right.
Some players aren't going to get better doing that. But it's the motion. And so back to the original question, that what I see coming off the ball is, and I'm going to talk lead wrist here.
Yes.
The lead wrist heads towards, and this is very important to say, it heads towards flexion. So the wrist is moving towards flexion. It doesn't mean it gets there. It doesn't mean it doesn't start in flexion. And not too many people start in flexion, but it moves there. Top, it moves towards extension. And that's what we see in the best players. Now, the biggest, 100 shooters, 120 shooters that we have out there still at this takeaway move towards flexion. I've never seen anybody not. Maybe Ryan Moore when he was lifting up at the start,
right.
When he had the wrist injury and he's lifting up, okay, he would be different. But I guarantee you that first takeaway move, he would have head towards flexion. So, if we have an outlier like that, that would be a little bit different. But everybody does that. And then you head towards extension to the top. You may not get there, but you head towards it. And then going down into the downswing, you head towards flexion.
Okay.
And maybe you get there, maybe you don't. Webb Simpson's never going to get there because he has a very strong grip. Paul Azinger is not going to get into flexion, but he's going to move that direction.
Right.
And, Dustin Johnson's never going to get into extension, but he's going to move even more towards flexion. And then you go towards extension, shortly right before you impact, and some really close to impact. And I have now 2 players that I've recorded that actually keep going into flexion through impact.
2 out of a bunch, right? So there's not too many that actually do that.
Yeah, no, and I'm still almost of the opinion that's because we don't have it precisely impact, maybe as precise in the AMM as what we should. I still believe that there's a possibility that that's not happening, but it's certainly, as the data goes, it is happening, and I have 2 players that have done it. And it's not very far. I mean, it's not, but about 240 frames a second. It's 1 click, 2 clicks at the most. But that's it. But there's 2 players that have done it. So at this point, I'm going to go with it's possible, but I still have ideas that maybe it's just we're not recording it exactly right at impact.
And that's what
it could be milliseconds off.
That's all. Would that be fair to say? That's also when we look at video, because I know when I was a young coach, I was trying to get everybody a flat lead wrist at impact, and then now through your research and learning more about what's actually happening with the forces and torques, is that's really not a feasible goal. Like, you could be going down a rabbit hole of, making the player worse. Trying to get them to lag the club and flat lead wrist could be dangerous.
Very, very, very bad. It could be hugely bad. Number one, they can't do it.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Because you're swinging. You can't. If you're swinging a driver, let's say, that's probably going to weigh somewhere around 100 pounds coming down towards it. You can't stop it. It's going whether you like it or not. And in fact, Dennis Sales and I sat in here with me trying so hard to hold it. And all I did was hurt myself, and I could keep it from going in the actual extension, but I couldn't stop it from moving towards extension. And every time I kept it from actually extending through impact, it hurt. And I still, trying to do it. It didn't work. And the ball would go like 2 feet off the ground.
Oh my gosh.
And I would swing around 100 to 105 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do it. And, you talk to, even I think I've had a discussion with Dr. Duffy that, we think somewhere around 50 miles an hour, you're probably going to lose the ability to hold that club off. Feel it all you want, but probably not going to do it. So having somebody trying to move their hand in that position would probably be a big mistake, in my opinion. As a general rule, doesn't mean you wouldn't tell somebody that, to still help them if it worked.
Right.
Certainly, I'm not a person that has to tell somebody something technically correct. I'll tell them anything I need to tell them to make them do what I need to do. If that's stand on their head, that's what I'm going to tell them. But, feel and real are still very, very different. So, that in those wrist angles, that's what I see the commonality. I did a little research, Joe Mayo and I did, because we were having an argument about wrist angles. And so
imagine that.
I went out there to Vegas. Yeah, I went out there to Vegas and we looked at it and what we found, didn't even end up being about our argument, but he was talking more about pulling down, and I was talking more about the motions and stuff like that. But what ended up coming of that is what we saw the amateurs do. And even scratch golfers, we saw that the amateurs don't close the club face soon enough.
So they don't try to flex the lead wrist soon enough. Yeah.
Right. So they're not shutting that club down, and all of our tour players do it relatively soon after the top.
Gotcha.
Now some go into more extension, coming down the top. There's definitely some of those. They're not exactly, right from the top, but closing that club face sooner. And then when I was working with Dr. McKenzie on the rated closure stuff, we noticed that when you close that club much sooner, it's my saying has become close it early so you don't have to close it late.
Okay.
And, most amateurs, they hold it open. I'm still don't know if they're all pulling down, but they definitely have a feeling of extending the wrist and it's too long and you see the club face coming down wide open.
Right.
And then at the end of this, from shaft parallel to impact, they got to shut it a long way. And they did, of course, obviously, if they get there and they're over the top swingers, they're going to hit it straight left, which is, probably a pretty good shot, but they don't like that, so they don't do it, and they end up slicing it back on line because they can't really close it soon enough. It was a clear picture that the amateurs do not close the club soon enough from the top. And so that certainly even affected my teaching over the last, I don't even remember when we did that, but I think it was a year or two ago. But it was somewhere in that range. But I've certainly, and then looking at rated closure stuff, certainly I get a lot of pushback from Michael Finney, on, we don't know what it is, but, whatever. I mean, a lot of coaching out there. Yeah, I'm not 100%, but of exactly what's all happening, but I'm 100% doing what I do with closure rates. I make my players better. And so I do use it. And I use it, and it's not to say that, what I see can't be proven wrong down the stretch, but any research that you do, can be proven wrong down the stretch.
For sure.
Even, maybe our laws of physics at some point, we find some new stuff. Now they're into string theory and stuff that, Einstein never thought about at the time, or maybe actually he did, but he wasn't really doing a bunch of equations on it. But we, I'm going to push the envelope on that, and I may step outside that box of what, science tells me to say if I'm seeing some good results with my clients. And we also have to remember, and going back to my original career where I didn't know anything I was doing, I was still making players better. I was telling them wrong things. I didn't know the ball flight laws. I was wrong.
Yeah.
But yet I made them better. So placebos work when they're applied at the right moment. And we don't have to be correct, to make somebody better. We have to be passionate. We have to believe in what we're doing. We have to know, sound like we believe this is going to work and get the person to believe in us and what we're saying. And, you can be wrong as rain and that player can be great.
Yeah.
And I think that, everybody wants to be technically correct and you're wrong and you're wrong and you're right. And I think we miss the fact that, what does it matter if we're wrong or right? If that player in front of us is getting better, they're getting better.
That's right.
And that's all that matters.
Yeah. That's
now when I talk to you as a coach, I want to be able to converse on a correct level.
Sure.
Right? But when we sit there and sit down and talk about styles, I want to know the craziest thing you said to somebody that works.
Yes. Yeah, the I tell my guys golf lessons come in many different looks, and as long as the player's getting better, you're a good teacher. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, you don't have to be technically correct to be a great teacher. I just don't believe it.
Yeah.
Do I chosen a path to learn? Absolutely, I have, because it's just me.
Right.
That's what I do. I want to know, but. has it helped me teaching? Absolutely. It's helped me, but doesn't mean I might be standing in a different place than I'm standing today, but I still believe that I never done it, I'd still be a great teacher. I believe that 100%. So I don't promote everybody has to go down the same path.
Right. So let's stay on the arms a little bit, because something that I've been kind of obsessed with lately is the trail arm and how that's working. And my staff and I know Robbie reached out to you after we did this little 2D research project of what made the best drivers different than the worst drivers on tour. And what we noticed, again, I talked to Tyler a little bit about this as well, is that the better drivers on tour, like the Tommy Fleetwoods and the DJs and some of the guys that were the better total drivers, were straightening their trail arm later. And the worst drivers that we saw, like Luke Donald and Phil Mickelson, were straightening it very early or even right at impact. So do you have any numbers on that, or is there any validity to that at all?
I would say yes. I'm not 100% sure what Tyler said, but I'm sure he agrees with me on that. But, I thought I would say, because, I've given Tyler I think he has all of my data. He's one of the guys that I will give it to, because I know he's going to take care of it. I know he's going to do great work with it.
Yes.
But I'm definitely see power in making sure that stays longer. I've looked more at the arc width of players, of being able to, extend that arc width through impact as being certainly a sign of a better player, a better ball striker, which would coincide with, lengthening that right arm a little later.
Okay.
Through that. I'm definitely on board with that. Numbers wise, I mean, I have to, I don't have it right in front of me. I'd have to look, but don't really need the number to know. We want that thing extending definitely through impact. Right. And at the higher impact. The speed, the better. Mm-hmm. Right. And definitely you're going to lose a lot of, I believe, if you straighten it too early. And I think you just lose control of the head.
Yeah, the face, right?
No data to back that up, other than, at that point, the face is going, and maybe it's this, and please out there, I don't know what I'm talking about right now, but it's a thought process.
That's okay.
But
this
maybe
is what it's
because
about.
You're applying that, right. maybe because you're not at the end of your rope, so to speak. You're still allowing some control before that head takes over. Because at some point in your swing past impacted through, that head's yanking on you. So maybe that's the reason, that's, Sasha or one of the doctors would probably cut my head off for even saying that. But that's, that's kind of in my mind. That's what I see from that, is that I just believe that player has better control as long as the inertia hasn't been jacked with yet. And that's kind of Phil or I don't even like talking about players.
Yeah.
Luke is that just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
They just lose a little bit of control. And I was on a radio show. I think it was I guess with maybe it was Larry Rinker or David Ledbetter the other day, and Phil came up, and I'm like, why is everybody trying to fix Phil? Phil's making $bajillion dollars. He's okay. Yeah. I don't even know if Phil could play that good if he hit it straight. Who cares?
Yeah, right.
Let's fix the dude that's shooting 90.
Right.
I could care less if Phil ever hits it straight. I don't even know if it'd even be fun to even work with him and try to make him hit it straighter, because he wouldn't be Phil.
Right.
And that guy's doing okay. Phil's okay. Phil can be a crappy driver. And Luke, good Lord, he's, it's documented. He's not that good a driver, but that dude made $20 million being a bad driver in 1 year. It's okay.
Yeah, and he was number one in the world.
And Luke's gaining distance. Sure.
Yeah.
And he's gaining some distance and now, and, I mean, short and crooked's not a good deal.
Yes.
Long and a little crooked, that's okay. Right. And so, that's just, it cracks me up when we got to fix all these people that all of them have lapped us in earnings by, I need to help, the Joe Blow 90 shooter or the up and coming, web.comer or mini tour player. And I think those ideas like making sure that right arm is straightening a little later and getting it is very helpful in my teaching.
Yes.
To getting them to hit it. And we're dealing with animals now too. I mean, the kid that just walked out of here before you called was, he's flying at 335 yards.
Jeez.
I mean,
it's crazy.
He needs control, right?
Yes.
I mean, and in golf, we're getting athletes.
Yes.
Now we're not getting the guy that, like myself, that I couldn't outrun the 300-pound dude anymore in football. So not a good sport for me. So that great hand-eye coordination, but I am not that big, and so but now it's not. It's more vogue or in vogue or whatever you want to call it to be an athlete and go play golf. And I think that's a lot of where this distance is coming from, because I don't know about you, I'm sure you're the same way. I mean, I'm working with a bunch of tight ends.
Yes.
I'm working with a bunch of pitchers. The kids that were the pitchers on the team are always the best athletes. That's who I'm working with all of a sudden over the last, probably 10 to 12, 13, 14 years.
Yeah.
And we're getting a lot more skilled talent, so we better be able to learn about the control of the golf club. That's why I'm heavy on the ROC and stuff like that, because we're dealing with speeds that we didn't see before. And very many people. I mean, obviously there was fast swingers of the club, in the 80s, but
right.
Not. I mean, hell, every kid is now. I mean, they're all swinging. I had a 5'10" guy in here yesterday swinging 116 miles an hour.
Wow.
I mean, that's, yeah. So that's what we're dealing with.
So how do we help? I mean, I think, for the coaches out there, because I know what I'm sort of doing, obviously I'm not going to change the way the right arm's working if it's okay, if it's working, but typically when it's not functional, I'm seeing the radius get long, and like you said, heel strikes with drivers, and then the face closes too much. So how do you sort of work that into your teaching if you got somebody? I mean, is it a sequence change? Is it a timing change? Or sort of talk a little bit about what you would do with a student, regardless of the skill level, of how you would fix that player or change it.
My favorite go-to is to have them swing one-handed and with their trail hand, their trail arm, and hit low shots. And that's probably my favorite, simply because I watch somebody that does that, and, they have to have a certain mentality. If you got somebody that needs, instant results, we're dealing with a different animal, but somebody that's willing to work and do it, if they're willing to swing and hit some bad, and just sit there, having a right hand and just letting them start swinging it, a 7-iron, maybe they're hitting it, 60 yards. I see that change. I see their body get a little more, a little more right side bend, and I see the hand get a little more ahead, and see the right arm not extend so quickly because they're tired of sticking it in the ground, or just thinning the ball, hitting it, too thin. And that's probably my favorite go-to thing I would think of, is just one-handed and trail arm swings, and then let them, look at the difference in the video of, look what this does. What does it feel like? I'm a big feel guy. What does it feel like when you do this? Now put your other hand on it. What does it feel like, when you do it for real? And then try to incorporate their feels of getting, instead of telling them 5 things to do, which sometimes you have to, but I'd rather give them that one little drill. And to me, that'd be almost my go-to first thing every time, is one arm, trail arm swings.
Interesting.
And get them to hit it pretty good.
Yeah. What would you ever put them in just impact position, show them where their body needs to be, where their arms need to be, and their hands, and then sort of work through impact and then backwards? Did you ever do that?
Sure. Yeah, sure I do. That doesn't seem as effective because it's more of a static position. It's not getting there dynamically, but people in impact say, okay, just swing back and chip it, and start to feel that impact position. And hang on just 1 second here.
Yeah,
I'm going to lose something real quick. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
I can
cut it out. I can cut it out.
But having them go back and feel that position where they're at that little impact position and then come back without them moving much. I wouldn't want that swing to be a very big swing because they'll always revert right back to their swing. But little, 10-yard little shots and getting them back to feeling that position of how that would feel coming through the ball. I can say that I'm not as effective with that. Maybe I don't know how to do it as well as other instructors, but it has worked in the past.
Gotcha.
Most of my stuff works when I get them to do something more dynamically in motion and get them a better concept of motion or movement. Getting somebody that's capable of getting more open will tend to get them to get that right shoulder down if they even want to hit the ball, because otherwise they'll thin it.
Okay. Open more with with the torso you're talking about?
More.
Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, and the pelvis. Yeah.
Yeah, the pelvis and the torso. Okay.
If they're capable.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously everybody listening is going to know that they're going to need to do screens and understand what they're capable of.
Yeah. So that's interesting.
If they can't turn, then you got a whole different animal.
Right. That's a good lead into one of the questions, or not even a question, but one of the things that I learned from you when Robbie came down to observe you, which thank you for allowing him to come and hang out with you, because he always brings back great things. And I know you're a big fan of the Orange Whip, which I am too, was talking about, because we're all trying to get people to transition better, right? I mean, the chops that we're teaching is, the hands are going to go out and the club's going to steepen. And so talk a little bit about the forces that the player's putting on the grip, in, I guess, opposite fashion from the right hand to the left hand, and how you tested that, because I thought that was really interesting. And I've had some just really quick results of using that little drill with the Orange Whip and asking that player what hand or what do they feel like is working harder. Do you remember that part?
Yeah. I mean, that's something that I went over with Robbie is when I have them using that Orange Whip to have them swing. Because the Orange Whip, first let's clarify on that. I've only had one player that didn't help in however many years I've been using. I think wasn't it at your place that we had the Orange Whip guy in there, and it was a total thing. It was like, and he ended up sending me whips. I was like, that wasn't a plug, I swear.
Yeah,
but,
and we're going to talk about that too with the short game. But yeah, keep going with the full swing transition.
Yeah, it's been a good product because it delays that player from casting their arms or getting their arms moving too far, too quick at the top. So it's been a great tool. So we'll talk about that. And when you have them swing it, and what I told Robbie that I do is that it's not just swinging. I mean, that's going to do what it does, but the player needs to be feeling it. Right. And so when I'm asking them, what are they feeling? Are they feeling it more in their right hand? They're feeling it more in their left hand. I'm more looking for information for myself as a teacher on what I should tell them. Is this a dominant right-handed person? Is it a dominant left-handed person? Where are they feeling it? Because if I just talk about the lead arm all the time, or the trail arm all the time, I'm gonna lose half of them.
Yeah.
They're not gonna do it. So the Orange Whip's definitely a good sense, and they get a good sense of their feelings of it, and then we can focus on what they're feeling and the force that they're putting on the club. So if we're looking at what we believe the most optimal way to do it, we're going to take that center of mass and we're going to send it up, and it's going to go out to behind the player, and that's usually what we'll see. There are players I've seen the mass go down and they're great. So let's quantify that. But if we're looking at that, then we know that force needs to go up. And if we're going to talk to that, we're going to have to push that club more up. And I think what Robbie was here talking about is he was talking about the lag. And if you do that, it's a cast. And I finally got him to understand that no, that's where I think we get the players in trouble, is they think they got to lag it by pulling, by cocking that wrist and going into hard extension. And I think that's back to our thing with Joe Mayo that we found.
Right.
That when we it's not a cast if you can get the trail arm to work and actually the trail wrist, and in fact, to actually extend a little bit while the flexion is starting to happen. Certainly in a video, we're not losing that look of lag, but we're getting that club to go up and back behind them and get it under the hand plane, which is going to ultimately, that passive torque's going to encourage, the strike. It's not going to cause the good strike of the club to come out, but it encourages it. And so here's this big understanding when he could finally understand that you could actually go into flexion and not have that club casting out early. And that's done with make sure that we have the orange whip and we have them feeling both arms of what each arm is doing. And when you look at a lot of 3D, you'll actually see the arms are opposing each other in the downswing. They don't really come together till later in the downswing. And one's doing one thing and the other one's doing something else.
Wow.
And a lot of times.
Yeah.
And, it's going to be great when we can finally see the pressures that you're putting on the grip. So that at that point, that'll be great if that ever happens. But it'll be a cool day because we'll absolutely be able to see that better than what right now. We're doing a lot of assumptions,
right,
of what's happening.
So it was interesting when you shared that with me and showed me sort of the exercise of. So what I tell them is, make some swings with the orange whip and then I call it put your brain in your hands, and I want you to describe to me what you feel like the left hand or the right hand is doing, which one's working harder, and then the direction that you're actually pulling the club. And typically I'm getting a lot of, I feel like my left hand is pulling towards the ball, which obviously is going to cause the hand path to come out and the club to steepen and, all the stuff we're trying to get them not to do. So it's like, as soon as I get them to focus more on the opposite hand that was not working hard enough and to pull in another direction. I know that's sort of a taboo language, pulling, but I just find that for the average players and the higher handicappers is they've got to have some sense of where they need to apply the force to that grip, and there's got to be some bit of pulling down in order for that to happen.
Well, I know one thing, that your arms in an angular momentum are moving a lot faster, and I can't imagine they're not pulling.
Yeah.
So I push back against the non-pulling. What I think, and in that was my original, I think even my argument with Joe, because he hates the thought of pulling.
Yeah, I know.
But aren't you pulling in some way? I mean, if I look at the graph, it looks like some stuff's happening there.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to take that away. But I believe what it ends up is exactly what you said. They're extending, they're feeling that arm go out, and they're extending the lead wrist, and they're not closing the club soon enough.
Right.
And that's exactly what Robbie and I were talking about, is turning that face more, towards the back of the room, away from the target early, and getting it kind of laying down behind you. And that really encourages good contact and good ball striking. And when it's just a different feel. And I just disagree with the word that I'm going to tell somebody to stop pulling.
Just pull in the right direction.
The idea of it. Maybe that's a better way to say it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I did, by the way, just steal your idea of putting the brains in the hands. I just stole that, by the way.
Yeah, that's cool. I can contribute something.
I think if we can, I think if we can get people to feel that and understand that, that's where we're at. Instead of we can't go worldwide and say you can't feel like you're pulling. Right. I even told him I feel like I'm pulling the crap out of the club, and that's when I hit my best shot. So I'm already out of the box of that, and I do feel like I'm pulling on it. Yeah. And maybe that's because I'm a fader and it works better for me. But I'm not going to take that away.
Yeah, I think it's
certainly if I extend my.
It's awesome if you can keep your hands back and your arms passive and you can pivot and that shallows the club out, then that's great. But I know that the players that I'm working with, the average club golfers that aren't that coordinated and haven't really educated their hands and arms, it's just not going to work. I mean, you've got to give them some other direction of what to do with the handle or what to do with their hands, and that's I totally agree. I mean, that I had a question come up on Guru Friday about what would be the one thing, it's a broad question. What's the one thing that you would teach if you could teach everybody? It would be exactly what you described, is get people to start motorcycling that left hand coming down. And even if you feel like you're letting the wrist angles out a little bit, you're really not affecting the shape of the swing. And all you're doing is putting the club face in a stronger position I always like to get them feeling like they're going to hook the mess out of it, and then show them how to not hook it with getting their body open and getting the pivot to work.
Yeah, that's an awesome way. I mean, that's what I always tell them. I'm going to teach you how to hook it, and then I'm going to take it away.
Yeah.
And when you start hooking it, you're going to hate me.
Right.
So
yeah.
So as soon as you start hooking it, you're going to hate me.
Be careful
the
what you
day
ask
you're really
for.
mad at me for hooking it, so we're going to fix this.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. I had a young man come in the other day and said, Coach Jon, my miss is long and left. I said, okay, I get it. You don't want that. I said, where do you want to miss it? And he looked at me like I had three heads. And I'm like, well, where do you want to miss it? And about 10 minutes later, he finally was strong enough to say, Jon, I don't want to miss it.
Yeah. Yeah, they want to hit it perfect every time.
Right. I get that you don't like long and left. I don't like it either, but we got to pick one, and
Yes.
let's decide what we're going to do so that we can move forward with the golf swing. So I think that's a big thing. People got to understand that, it's not how good you hit it, it's how good you miss it.
Exactly.
And if we can get that across to our 90 shooters, they immediately become 80 shooters. Yep. And so I got about maybe 5 more minutes here.
Oh man, you're killing me. We're definitely gonna have to do a round 2, because I've got so many personal development questions I want to ask you. So I'll have you back on, and we'll do a round 2. So let's leave them with the last thing with the Orange Whip, which was the coasting piece, right? So tell them a little bit about the sequence that you found in good players with pitching, and we'll kind of wrap it up after that.
Okay. In the pitching, what I went after, and I first started at 10 yards. I did 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 yards. And I just started noticing that they all look the same as far as that goes. So I ended up mostly at 30 yards testing, and because it was just too long for the players to go through all that. So we just ended up at 30 yards. And then when I started noticing two things, I started noticing that the sequence in the downswing was in reverse. And what I mean by that is decelerated, if at all, last. And then the thorax decelerated second to last. And then the arms decelerated first. So it was a reverse sequence in that case. So it's 3, 2, 1, is the way that 3, 2, 1, 4 is the way we look at it in the kinematic sequence as
right.
In the downswing. And I think that's what gets lost in this thing. And I had a conversation the other day. It's not the transition. I had this on Larry Rinker's show the other day, that, it's been said out there that, in pitching, you want to throw that club at the transition first. Fine feel, great feel. I think James Siekman, had it in his book that way.
Right.
And, obviously you go see James Siekman, you're going to make a lot of money. So let's put that up there, right off the bat. That guy's an awesome teacher. But the facts of the matter for the coaches out there is the sequence in the transition stays the same. Occasionally we'll have a reverse in the sequence, and it's maybe 20% of the players, where the club will go before the arm. But 100% of the players in the transition, the pelvis goes first, not the club. So I want to make sure we talk about that.
Yes.
The reverse sequence happens in the downswing. In the downswing, that's when it happens. And I started seeing all these players, no matter who their coach were, no matter what they were being told, they could be told opposite things. Had this discussion with Chuck Cook the other day. Chuck Cook tells people to pinch the ball against the ground. Most of us that have looked at enough video know that it doesn't happen.
Right.
And Chuck will maintain that it happens. Great. Chuck's a great coach. I don't have any issue with that, because I know when I measure his players in pitching, they look just like my players or your players or anybody else, other good coaches' players. They coast through impact. So they maintain their speeds. They do not decelerate much. And if they do, their sequence is in reverse. And the arm looks like it's stuck to the pelvis. Stuck to the thorax.
Mm-hmm.
So they're accelerating. The thorax and the arm are accelerating at the same speed.
There you go.
And then the arm decelerates off of the thorax. And, that could be caused by the wrist release or the casting of the club.
Right.
Talked to Greg Rose about that, and we kind of agree on that the faster you release the hands, the more deceleration of that arm you'll get. And, someone like a Luke Donald who puts a tremendous amount of spin on the ball, his decelerates pretty sharp, and he's probably the most handsy player.
Right. He's got a lot of hand or wrist rotation.
I say that. Right, and I call that I say that with a big, huge grain of salt because he still doesn't use it a lot. He's still not really a handsy player. The players don't use their hands not that much. But when you refer back to a Jason Day, who is at the opposite end of the spectrum, he doesn't decelerate as hard with his arms, and he therefore doesn't put as much spin. But both of those guys are the best at pitching that I see. Jason does uses trajectory and a lot of times uses spin, and both of them are awesome. But their sequencing and how they look in 3D looks extremely similar. So that's the one similarity that I started to learn in 3D is that I can coach every player to do that.
Right.
I worked a lot with Jeff Leishman on this, Tyler Farrell. Mostly with Tyler was on the other end of Jeff Leishman when we were working on it from me, so we didn't talk a lot about it at the time. But Jeff was kind enough we did a lot of experimentation on his players, and
Daniel,
and we could try stuff and we could try stuff and see how it worked because we knew what we were looking for, and so we developed the drills that I showed you, like the open hand drill that we use in pitching, things like that. And we have another one where it's a right arm pitch where you're holding your left arm, you're holding your left hand just above your trail. I'm going to say your lead hand just above your trail elbow, and just a lot of rotation, a lot of one hand trail in and shots. And we started to see that work very well. Then we started to see that the Orange Whip Junior, if you didn't let the shot, which is what I showed at your workshop. I believe that's what I did.
Yep, that's right.
Where we're not bending that, we started to see the sequence. So we're trying to develop a way that we could train all of our players to do that. And consequently, my players in pitching and Jeff's players in pitching, we're producing some of the top in the game for sure. And doing this, and because we're developing an idea that this is something that all the great players do. That's something that we can teach. The rest of the golf swing we can, pick and choose.
Right.
But certainly the pitching is very, very similar. And the other thing that I started noticing is that all these players on stock shots were launching the ball between 27 and 30 degrees on the TrackMan.
Yeah, the magic
and
30.
That was a given. And right. And I would go in and I would look at their stats, and they would be in the top 50 in the world in that stat when I would see it, and then their stats would get worse when that stock shot would go. Most of the time it'd go higher. Very rarely did it go lower. But we started to see that, and it watch the fluctuation of the player, and then you check it, and then you see it. So those are two correlations that I think that us as teachers, we could all follow.
Yes. And
our players would be better. And of all the things that I've looked at, the wrist angles that we talked about earlier, that motion, that idea of flexion, extension, that motion is across the board almost. I mean, I don't even know one player that doesn't do it. So the same with the pitch. All the players do it. Just figure it out. The great players figure it out. So we should pay attention to that.
100%.
No matter what we're telling them, if they're figuring out how to be great doing it, then we ought to learn how to teach them to do it.
That's right.
Instead of, when I'm around Luke, I can promise you the last thing I'm going to be doing is telling him how to pitch the golf ball. I love to be around him, and I love to be around Pat Goss and listen. And like Luke, I think he gets tired of me sometimes because I know, what'd you feel? What are you doing? I know the mechanics of it because I can
Yes.
see it in the 3D. I just want to know what he's feeling, how he's doing it. He's one of the most gracious people I've ever met in my life, and he's been very open to letting him know. And I'm sure he knows that I'm turning right around. I'm going back, and what Luke says, and what even Jason says and feels. I'm going back and relaying these things to my players, to their benefit, because those are the greatest players I've been around pitching the ball, and and it couldn't be more different in the look
Right.
of the style.
Yes.
But the 3D looks really close to the same when you look at it in that, except for just the wrist release. But again, both of them are not using their wrist. Luke will very rarely ever go past 90 degrees. He's not going to go to radial deviation, and yet he looks very handy. He might go to 0, that'd be about his limit.
It's more forearm rotation,
not,
right?
In his real swing, he may go to
Is it a little more
a lot of forearm rotation.
Yeah, because I know James Ridyard
Yeah.
talks a lot about. He had, I guess, had some 3D graphs of his pitching, and he loves his pitching action as well, and talked about that very thing. He has the most rotation, I guess, about the club face than most people in pitching, and he's amazing. Obviously, the feel is incredible.
Well, here's what I'd want. Don't try to teach that to everybody, because
Yes.
Luke is special.
Yes.
Luke's in a class by himself when it comes to that, and I definitely, I'll use that rotation sparingly, because Luke's amazing at it, and he's just Luke, and that's a part of him that just separates him from everybody else, separates him from the best pitchers in the world, and it's not something that everybody can do. I tell you, you can talk to Ryan Chaney. I gave him a little piece of Luke, and it's really changed his pitching. It's really changed, and that's what I even tell Pat Goss. I tell him, no, it's a Ryan Chaney idea with a splash of Luke.
Gotcha.
And I think Ryan's somebody that really took to that idea of rotation very, very good, but it's also not. It's pretty rare.
Sure.
I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
That a player can do what Luke does. Now, the way that Jason does it can fit a lot of players.
Yeah.
His is much more simple. It's much less motion, much less movement. Now that we can go along with a lot of players. That motion is more, I guess, mainstream, can be taught to most any player.
Sure.
It's probably easier to teach somebody not to move than it is to move.
Yeah.
For
sure.
I guess that's the way I would look at it. But
Well,
that's what I
awesome.
found in the pitching in the 3D, and Tyler Farrell is the one that named it coasting, because we were together one day and I showed it to him and I was looking at him. This is what I see. I said, "What are you going to call it?" And he just spit it out, coasting.
Yeah.
And I love it, and that relates to my players better when I say that. You want to feel that thorax and pelvis coasting through impact. We can, anybody can argue whether that's technical. They're maintaining acceleration is what they're doing. I don't know, it's not coasting, but it's a great way to feel it and look at it. They're not decelerating hard like you would in a power swing, and that's the difference. I look at the difference, and this would be great for coaches, that I look at the difference of a throw as being a power swing versus a toss being the pitching motion, and I think Siekman calls it a power or something versus finesse or something like that. I'm not 100%. Finesse versus power or something. Mm-hmm. Again, that's a great way to put it to players. You're tossing or pitching pennies. You're not throwing a baseball. And I think that relates to players pretty good.
That's awesome. Well, John, thank you so much for sharing this. I mean, we could go on for hours. We're going to do a part 2, because I didn't even get to half of my questions. So this has been fantastic. But I just want to thank you for being so open to share your information, because I find it so valuable, and it's helped my teaching a tremendous amount, as well as my staff. So thank you for all your contributions to teaching and really to the game in general.
Yeah, well, we can get to the next questions. I talk a lot, so we can get to the next question. We can do it next week or whatever.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I just got a gentleman waiting to learn about putting right now, so
no problem at all.
And I'm honored that you asked me. I really appreciate it, and love to do it.
So give the listeners real quick before you go how they can reach out and say thank you. Give them your Twitter handle and your social media platforms and your website.
Twitter handle at JRS2. That's 2 capital I's, and I'm not sure, it may be 2 little I's. I got to relook at that, but
yeah,
that's my Twitter handle. But is it 2 little I's?
Yes.
Okay. But you can get me at sinclairgolf.com on my website there, and you can email me at jon@sinclairgolf.com, and try to get back to everybody that will call in. I'll give them whatever information we can give them.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on the show. We'll talk again soon.
All right. Good talking to you. Tell your son I said hello.
I will do that. Thanks so much, Jon.
Okay. See ya.
See you, buddy. What's up, everybody? Guru back here again. Just a couple of things before you go. First, big thank you to Jon Sinclair, my friend. He is my go-to guy when I have any questions about the truth about what's happening with the golf club or the body or the golf swing. This guy has such great information and is so willing to share it and help other coaches that we need more guys like Jon in our industry. So please reach out to him on Twitter or Instagram at JRSII. That's JRSII, and I'll hook that up in the show notes as well. Or visit his website at sinclairgolf.com and say thank you to Jon. Tweet me your biggest takeaway from Jon. There's so many just fantastic nuggets that he threw out at us in a very short amount of time about 3D and what he's learned. And also how to apply it to a golf lesson, which I think is huge. The application cannot be lost in the data and the information. Always remember that. You can always reach out to me on Twitter at Golf Guru TV or Instagram, or friend me up on Facebook. Love to talk golf and give me some feedback on what's going on and how you enjoy the show or how I can do better. So also check out my website at www.golfgurutv.net. where I've got tons and tons of videos, articles, and great information. I have all the old Guru Workshop videos and presentations on there that people probably didn't even realize were on there. If you want to go check out those, they are available at no charge, so they're free. So some awesome information from some great coaches. So send me a question for Guru Fridays. I want to bring that back here in the next few weeks. I've gotten a few questions here. I want to gather a few more. If you want your questions answered by the Guru, email me at golfgurushow@gmail.com, and I will make up a fake name, or you can make one up yourself, but I will keep you anonymous. But enjoy doing those shows. Probably have my staff back on here in the next couple of weeks, as we've been doing some really cool stuff in training, so look forward to that. Leave me an iTunes review or a rating and let me know how I'm doing. As always, I leave you with the infamous quote from Mr. Rohn: study, practice, teach, and then pass it on. Share this show with somebody that you love or somebody that you don't love that you think might help them get better. So I appreciate all the subscriptions. I appreciate the downloads, and I will talk to you next time.